Welcome this week's live partner training, and just want to welcome here one of our special guests here today. We have this week one of our senior advisors, in fact, the head department here to the advising team, and her name is Jan, and she comes with a wealth of knowledge from understanding banking and understanding business credit building for our clients. And I just wanted to make the connection this week and with our partners so that you guys understand what advising does, right? And what is it, how crucial and the little steps that we take to prepare your client once you bring them in the system, and what it all entails, and how we do it. So Jan is her name, and Jan, if you can give us a little bit about what you do here, maybe a little background, that way you can introduce yourself to all these wonderful folks here this week, live partner training.
Well, welcome everyone to our webinar today. Excited to be able to be a part and talk with you on it. As Hiram said, for me to give you a little background, I have been in finance and credit for over 20 years. Love being a part of helping everyone's clients build business credit. It's a really exciting part to be a part of the advising team. We take a lot of pride and passion in helping the client step by step in going through building their business credit, going through questions they have, and helping them get to the point of success in having a great credit profile.
Absolutely. And Jan, you and your team do an excellent job on that. We've seen some tremendous stuff happening, coming out of your department here, and I know a lot of partners. Even when I first started with the company, when I owned my business, everything was personal guarantee. Everything that I was doing was tied to me, but I never knew what business credit really was. Right? You go to these big banks. You walk into Bank of America, J.P. Morgan, Chase, and we want credit. Right? It doesn't matter. We understand that an entity should have business credit. Every business out there should have business credit. There should be no reason why we're using, if I'm in real estate, there should be no reason why I'm using my personal credit, going out to Lowe's, Home Depot, Sherwin-Williams, Amazon, and having to apply for these things on my own, taking a hit on my credit. So, but there's more to just applying for credit, and that's one thing that I learned. You really have to set yourself up credible enough to these lenders to show that, listen, this is not a hobby I run here. This is a real business. And one of the things that we'll be talking here today and dig into the details is not only applying for credit and how to apply and who to apply and what time frame, but also credibility. And I think that's one of the first steps that when you bring a client on board, or even for the partners that are going through the program and learning the program from the ground up, credibility is crucial. And I want to kind of dig into that a little bit, and why it's so important, why we spend time with your clients in fixing in certain times, fixing things for them because they've done it the wrong way, and how we can set them up credibly so that they can become lendable strong to eventually get what they need out of the program. So Jan, I just want you to touch briefly on credibility. I think that one of the biggest things that I face here at Credit Suisse when I'm talking to a client that doesn't understand business credit, a lot of them will say, okay, well, I have an EIN, I have a Dun and Bradstreet number, so okay, so I'm ready to obtain what? Right? And you have to go through the ropes and explain more details of credibility. So can we touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, that sounds great because you're exactly right. There's a lot more to credibility than would seem to make sense, especially when people are used to the personal side. The business side is going to be different from the person's thought process on personal. When you come to the business side, when you're looking at having a business name, you want a business name that can be marketable, and a business name that we also have them check to make sure it's not already being used with the
Hmm.
Secretary of State, with their location. I mean, you're trying to market it, you don't want 5 other companies right in your same city, same company name, right? You want yours to stand out, where people come to you and they know what product they're coming to you for. Also with the business address, that's probably one of our key points that a lot of clients need that help with. Business address, having it matching, having it be a proper business address that is going to see them the best success. With personal, you could have 5 people living at the same location. You could have total different addresses on your personal credit report, and that doesn't keep you from having things report. But it's a different ballgame when you're looking at it for business credit. Having a
Mhm.
business address that isn't shared, if you're running 3 businesses out of your home, all trying to use that same business address, it's going to cause a problem in your success when you try to have items report correctly.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it doesn't just pull the EIN and go and report. So the business address, that's something we spend an in-depth time with clients going over what's best for them to use, how to have that best success when it comes to reporting, making sure everything matches, even down to if they put street with the IRS or ST with the Secretary of State, they want to have that the same. Those abbreviations even matter, which doesn't seems a little foreign to most clients because it doesn't matter on the personal side. But that's where we're here to help. And that's where we can bring our expertise in and let them know, hey, this is going to be for your best chance to make sure everything is credible when you try to move forward. So we go in depth with that on them. We help them look up what the Secretary of State has, guide them on each step of what to do there to take care of that. When you go further in the step 1 here, their business entity ties all in with business name, making sure, and business address, and even step 1.4, the EIN number. All those are linked together there to make sure the Secretary of State and the IRS is set up properly. When you go down to the business phone number, having a phone number that can be listed in the National 411 is an important item. A lot of the vendors, though it may seem a little old school that you can't use a cell phone for your business, it still unfortunately needs to be checked with the National 411. A business cell phone number, even if they have it through a cell phone company, lists in the cell phone company directory, not nationally. And so that's where a lot of guidance is needed in that part, just so that a vendor doesn't decline them for something so little. Business website and email, as you guys probably all know that are listening into this, that helps you be more marketable. A client doesn't have to have that to move forward, but it's definitely a plus when they're looking at becoming more marketable and for their client's sake too when clients are purchasing from them. Business license, we always encourage someone to make sure with their city or county that they have that taken care of so that later on when they're looking at accounts, especially when you get into more of the revolving credit cards, that they have the business license properly set up. And also when they look into the finance aspect, that they are licensed for what they are selling and doing with their business. Business bank account is something that they do want to have before moving forward. To have that showing all their revenue going in and out of their business bank account helps with the finance and the business credit builder side of it all linked together there, because a lot will want to see what they have in their business bank account. Business merchant account, that they can have, that's going to be helpful to them to generate revenue, right? So that people can pay them with credit cards. It's not a requirement to move forward on the business credit builder side, but that's more of a help to them to be able to take payment from their clients. And that's kind of it in a nutshell. So, but step 1, all those foundational items are really essential so that when they're building business credit, when they're trying to prove that they're lendable to finance and also getting different accounts and the vendors, this shows, hey, they have a strong foundation. I feel they're credit worthy and we can start to lend them credit because they have everything lined up properly.
Perfect, perfect. Well, those are one of the things that I want to bring up. Last week we were at a funding conference, and some of the things that were coming up is that and we were talking with real true lenders, real live lenders, and what they were saying was the terminology that they use, and I like the way they put it, was that we need to ensure that this is not a hobby. Okay, if you're asking me to provide you some sort of terms and conditions, I want to make sure that you have a business name, a business address. You're an entity. You have an EIN. All these things are in place because now we can compare you to our past experience on the other previous business that we've loaned money to, and they have everything lined up and in order. And we don't want to loan money to businesses who are just hobbies. I mean, if you are, just spending time, you have a W-2 job, you're not really dedicating too much time to the business, that's not the type of business that we want to loan to or provide them any type of terms. But credibility was one of the things that we call it here. And very little do we know that this is the few things that these banks were looking to be able to provide the information. And then what I mean is, little do we know here in the sales team, where we, a lot of the questions that come up, we say, listen, that's why we have advisors for. We're experts to understand that this process really works, because we've helped tons of clients. But there's certain steps that our team of advisors understand, know how to bring them through the process, set them up credibly, and now present this business to a bank that says, okay, or a credit card company, or a vendor, or fleet, or revolving card company that says, yeah, I'm in. You have all the guidelines, you've hit all the metrics. They have the Paydex score, they have the time in business, they're generating revenue. And it's really neat to see our clients go from step one and then eventually get to what they need, and get what they need out of the program. So one thing here that I do have a question, and it comes up from time to time. There's a lot of times that our clients will ask, there's a certain industry code that I should have in my business profile to look low risk. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, and where does that specific code or number come into play?
Sure. So when a client is looking at what they're setting up for their industry type, their business name, when building business credit, they're normally talking about their SIC code. The SIC code a lot of times will relate with what they're doing with the business credit bureaus and list that there, depending on the monitoring that they have. For that, when building business credit, the industry type, when you're looking at accounts in steps 3 through 7, your industry type isn't going to play as huge of a factor into it, restricting you from getting net accounts or revolving credit cards. Your industry type plays a little bit more into it for specific types of financing, if you're in real estate or different types, but it doesn't mean that it restricts you from all types. So that's where people play more into it, where you're going to see that. You don't need to have a specific code or not a certain code if you're looking at building just the business credit accounts in steps 3 through 7. Sometimes what people will do, real estate's probably the big one that people have most questions on, so I'll use that as an example. When you're looking at real estate, a lot of times people don't just do real estate, right? They might do consulting with it. They might have some other avenues that they help out. They might even help with some decorating as they do the real estate. So then they'll do more of a general industry type. A lot of times they pick consulting because they do consulting in many avenues when you're working real estate, not just the selling of the real estate. So that's a common thing that people will pick and do. Now we do have a list, and we email that out to anyone who asks for just a nice way to get the SIC code, a list of that, and that's constantly updated by that site. It's not on our site as a list because that constantly changes. So we actually direct people to that website if they want to look up an SIC code. It's not a requirement to put that in step 1, because on the business credit builder side of it, that doesn't play as huge of a part in getting approved for the net accounts or the revolving credit cards. But that's a great question that you had, because people do have that question. How does that play into it? How important is it? What do I do if I'm in real estate? So.
Yeah, well, that brings me to the next question here. You kind of tapped on it a little bit, right? So, we have here restricted industries, and we know what restricted industries is. It says clearly decline. And you can find this here by going to step 1, which is basically 1.1, enter a business name. But what we find here is that if you go into view restricted industry, you can see the restricted industry. So before you bring in a client into the program, you can see if these industries are they're going to run into a little bit of a situation with obtaining. But then there's other types of high risk industries here that that have stricter underwriting guidelines, but a lot of people think, well, that doesn't, am I going to be able to obtain credit? So when it comes down to real estate, or when it comes down to over-the-road trucking, which is one of the biggest book of business that I think we do often here, would you say that the name is very important and plays a crucial role in obtaining the funding, or does that not really matter? And I think you kind of touched on it a little earlier.
Yeah, for trucking, we don't have people have a problem in getting any net accounts or revolving credit cards on the business credit builder portion of it, those accounts that you're seeing in steps 3 through 7,
Mhm,
if they're in trucking or real estate, even if it said their company name just said Trucking Enterprises. We don't see that as much. Now, when you're looking at the funding aspect of it, um, that's going to be different depending on what type of financing they're looking into. And then the
mhm,
finance team can go a little bit more in depth on that part too. A
mhm,
lot of times, what people will choose for a company name when they're speaking with the advisor team and they're just developing that, especially when it comes to real estate and even with trucking. Sometimes people who do trucking have something else with it. Some of them realize, hey, you know what? I really want to keep my name as Trucking ABC or something to that degree. And they'll do that. That doesn't mean that they can't get any type of financing. As you see from this too, they might have a little bit stricter guidelines when they're doing that, but that's why it's important that they put their business revenue all in their business bank account. That's why it's important that all the items in step 1, the credibility is established. Those things hold so much weight into balancing it all out when they're looking at a high risk industry.
awesome.
And perfect.
Yes, no, go ahead. I'm sorry. Uh,
No, I just get a little passionate about helping clients. So I was going a little long. Your turn.
No, no, totally fine, totally fine. Now, one of the things that we always run across, right, and we get a lot of questions on this, and I wish I had a little jar that I can collect $5 on every time I get asked on this question, is registering. We have a lot of times people say, well, registering in Las Vegas, I'm out of Wisconsin, or I'm out of New York, I want to register in this state because it's better. What are the pros and cons to that?
Excellent question. We get that a lot too. So when a person does that, it comes to the difference in taxes a lot when they foreign file like that. They do need to speak, with their accountant on that for the details, tax purposes, because we're not licensed to give detailed tax advice. But what we can help them out with is making sure that it's set up for the building the business credit portion. So a lot of times, just as an example, people live in California, choose to set up in Nevada instead. When they do that, if they're going to start off and they register their company in the state of Nevada and say they have a brick and mortar building address that they're using in California. When they set up at the Secretary of State in Nevada, they're going to want to give that California address as their business address. They'll also set up with the IRS with their EIN number when they apply for that. Use that same business address. That ties into what I was briefly going over in step 1.2 about that business address matching everywhere.
Hmm.
Same address they would give to their vendors, everything when they go and apply. Now, when it comes to it though, because they're actually operating and residing in the state of California and but they're licensed in the state of Nevada, they're going to want to make sure for tax purposes what type of fees they're going to have to pay on that. And that's where they would consult with their accountant on that.
Hmm.
One other thing on it, and then I'll definitely give it if you have more questions on that. Sometimes maybe they reside in the state of California, but they want to use a Nevada address. So they'll get a
Hmm.
virtual address. Or maybe they have a brick and mortar place that they also use in Nevada. Maybe they share it, and say, hey, I'm going to use that, and that's the one I want to share with the Secretary of State. That's the one I want with the IRS and my vendors. And they put a different mailing address, so if they get a product from one of their vendors in steps 3 through 7, it gets mailed to them in California. That's okay. The business address needs to be the same with the Secretary of State, the IRS, and each one of their vendors so they don't have a problem when it comes to reporting. But they can register in a different state than they reside. It's just the tax
Hmm.
purposes, it would affect them speaking with their accountant to find out their tax laws.
Got it. Got it. Okay, now one of the things that we also run across often is some clients will come on board and have a lot of things, lined up, and a lot of them will do a lot of things on their own, but all over the place. We'll have a business name not matching a specific, the state paperwork, and so on and so forth. We'll have a business address, and they have two EINs locked into an address. And one of the things that even that last week's banking conference that I was at, the banks were discussing that when they're reviewing your business, they're even pulling Google satellite images to see where the business is. And if they're seeing a home address, sometimes that may deter them from providing you terms. So would you say that a good alternative to a home address would be a virtual address?
Yes, you're exactly right. We've had clients tell us that that's happened to them. We do verify with all the vendors we have listed in steps 3 through 7. And yes, they will, especially if they feel there's other red flags on those foundational items. They will be able to see that. Some people have said, well, if I use my home address, can I say suite, 12 instead of apartment 12? Well, unfortunately, in today's technology, it's all able to be seen. And so doing a virtual address, if they don't want to go and rent a brick and mortar building, completely understandable. A virtual address we have found very beneficial to our clients. The key is to make sure they use a virtual address that is going to be acceptable by lenders. We have 3 good ones in step 1.2 that we've done the due diligence to make sure that's going to line up and be a reputable company. If they choose to use something else, they'll want to do that due diligence, and we go into depth with them what that kind of means too.
Got it. Got it. Now, for some of our partners that are out there, kind of break down a little bit of what happens when our partners log a client in through the system. Obviously, for those that are new here, I'm just going to do a quick demo here. It's just basically going to add clients is where you would be able to bring your client in through the system, and then exactly where you see where it shows business credit builder, you would enter your client's information in there, their state, and then obviously submit your client over for the business credit building program. Now, as soon as the system triggers that information, the credentials to log in, welcome, set your password. What's the turnaround time? How soon are these clients able to hear from you guys?
We try to get to them within, the first 15 minutes. It can take up to an hour to get to them. If someone is entered in as a new client before 7 p.m. Eastern, they will be called that day. My team knows that that person needs to be called because we want no one to feel like, hey, I just signed up for this. What do I do next? We want them to have that call from us. Let them know that we're here to help. Make sure they got that welcome email. They know how to log in. So they're not sitting in the evening and be like, hey, I paid for this and I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So we always want to make sure we engage with them right off the bat, and then we do work with them those next 5 business days and make sure that we do calls and reach out to them via email, trying to help them with what to do next. Also go over them what they've already done, and so forth. Do regular follow up and engage with them on a regular basis.
Got it. Got it. So you guys hear that clearly. I mean, we want to make sure that we're making constant touch points with these clients. We want to keep them engaged. We want to keep them moving through the process because things have to be in order and for them to be able to see the return on investment of what they've invested into this program. So I think that your team does an excellent job by keeping the clients engaged, not losing focus of the ultimate plan here. Getting their score up, adding the accounts in the appropriate time frame, making any necessary changes that need to be done to their credibility. And I think that that is important for us to continually work with you as a partner, work with your clients so that we have constant communication with all parties involved and just getting them through that process so that, again, there's no lag time in all this. Yes, there will be the time, and I'll let you elaborate on that, Jen. There will be a little bit of time where, maybe they jumped on board and they did some stuff and they have to, re-clean everything up again, and we'll help them fix it. And some of these states, they do take a while to respond back, to make changes and so on. But we're always constantly wanting to keep the client engaged and want to make sure that they can go through this process as seamless as possible.
Yeah,
So
exciting.
you stated that for the first 5 days, we're calling once a day, just making sure everything is moving, through the process fairly quickly. Now, one of the things that we see, and I've heard, for a person like an accountant, an attorney, and giving advice, sometimes they'll limit somebody, it's 300 to 400 bucks an hour to give advice, even on a business, excluding, legal and accounting services. But we offer a really solid service here where we are able to advise the customers, and we're not providing them limits, right? I mean, if I'm a new startup, I'm going to have a lot of questions. So, is your team available to receive my call 5 times a day, or am I restricted? I mean, help me here. It's
Nope, I actually tell clients, and my team kind of laughs, even when I've trained new people to my team, I say, call us 10, 15 times a day. We don't care. We want every question they have for them to feel that they have that instant access to be able to help them move forward, see that success so they don't feel like, hey, I'm on my own here. What do I do next? We don't care. And my team really is passionate about that. And so I would definitely encourage any clients, doesn't matter how many questions, even if their question takes a minute, not a problem. That's what we're here for. We want them to keep feeling like, okay, now I know what to do. Here's the game plan of what to do tomorrow. And so they can keep moving forward.
Yep, perfect. Now, one of the other things that I do get often here, well, not often, but ones and twosies, right? But I hear it at least 1 or 2 times a month. Some of our partners have a really good relationship with their clients, and we get it. All right, you want to make sure that the other person on the other end, like Jen or anybody on her team, can give that same attendance and live in the model that your business goes by. But some of our partners want to really be hands-on in this process, and a lot of times I say, listen, you can, but keep in mind, we have a really good team here that's specialized, that will represent themselves as your employees, and do a really good job of that. There are pros and cons to that, but I think there's more cons to the pros. Can you elaborate a little more on that, help out some of the new partners that are coming on board? And I do get to hear that. Look, I've known this person, I've helped him in credit repair, I've gotten him a mortgage, or I do his taxes. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, and speak a little bit on the truth here?
Sure. And what we find in that, so I can totally understand why people would want to be hands-on, right? They kind of feel like they're abandoning their client. What's happening? The hard part about it is if someone else is advising them and my team's advising them, we don't know what you've advised them on. We'll say that we are your advisor team. Well, if we're your advisor team and we don't know that you've told them A, B, and C because you haven't had a chance because you're so busy to relay that to us. Now, if we go and say the exact same thing to them and repeat it, that's going to look like a disconnect, right? It's going to make them start to
Mhm,
lose faith in their advisor team and say, well, hey,
mhm.
I've already discussed this with him. He said he was looking into this, and now why are you guys asking about it? There's so many ways there
Yeah.
can be a disconnect, and it's going to make someone lose faith in your guys' advisor team because we are your advisor team for that client you've signed up. That's one of the biggest problems that we see with it. You know, everyone's so busy in today's day and age. And so not only are you guys so busy that are doing it, the client's so busy. And if we don't know what you've all discussed with them, that makes it hard. We put in our notes and give a summary of our conversation in the advisor note. So that's listed there for you. And so you can see what we've been discussing with them. But I don't think that's something that we've found most partners want to do is give us a summary back so we can all be on the same page. Um, and then if at some point you want to hand it over to us and have us more hands-on, we would need a summary to kind of know so that again, the client's not repeating themselves. That's a very frustrating thing we found for clients when they feel they have to repeat just to be able to move forward.
Got it. Got it. Now, as far as the vendor count here, Some people will, before they even come and jump on board here with us, I hear some really funny stuff here. Because I mean, if you go to our business credit building side of things here, and on some vendor accounts, let's say for example like Barnett, there's certain amount that the client has to spend in order for that trade line to report. I hear sometimes that some of these clients, they'll jump on a webinar, get that information from Ty and say, oh, I'm going to give you the first three, vendor counts, or maybe the first five to jump on board. But, these companies, I don't know, but I feel like they take advantage that a lot of these business owners don't understand how the process really works. And, where they don't have to spend more than a certain amount of money, but they're spending, $1,000, $3,000 in with just one vendor count. And I think that that same company is holding them hostage so that they can get them to spend a little more, holding the carrot in front of them to say, okay, well, uh, you know, we'll let you know when we report, because that's all we're looking for, right? In step three of the program. So can you shed a little light on that? I mean, what is
Sure.
really the
It's kind of
truth
a
to that all?
tightrope act a little bit. If they called the vendor and said, hey, I'm only signing up for this, what's my minimum to purchase just to get it to report, and I don't plan on utilizing you, it's sometimes, to say it kind of maybe a little silly here, but it's kind of hurts their feelings. They're like, well, I'm not going to give you an account. I want you to use my product. I want you to think I'm awesome, right?
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
so when a client goes to them, we let them know, hey, what is the best terminology to say if you're going to go sign up with one of those vendors is you want this account, but you also want to be able to have a double purpose to it. I want my account to be able to report as same as going and utilizing your product. Don't say,
mhm.
what's my minimum? I'm only going to use you once just to get it on there. You know,
Yeah,
we don't want
yeah.
to tell them that. Now, when a client on the other aspect, when we're talking to them, some of the accounts they're looking at might be a stepping stone to getting to other accounts. So they don't want to spend $1,000, $100 even, right? The
Mhm,
minimum normally we've found is $50. They
mhm.
spend $50. That's kind of like the magic number that a lot of the vendors need to report. Key to remember though, that's $50 before shipping and handling. So if you order
Got it.
something really heavy, I think that's going to save you, I'm just joking on that. But you
Yeah.
want to make sure that you have something that's a $50 purchase. If it's a direct requirement, it's going to be listed to qualify on this specific vendor. But just as a general rule, that's usually what they need to spend. Now, what you're kind of hearing to with your question that you feel that they're kind of pushing towards that is you're going to see that more if they're talking to a salesperson. We always tell
Right.
them to talk to the credit department with the vendor.
Mhm. Got it. Wow, that's pretty good. I just learned that today. Now, usually, how long does that take for on a typical? Usually, as a partner, what should we tell our clients? So, like a lot of times, our partners, what we say is paint the picture of the program, right? The steps.
Mhm.
Provide them not too details. Don't give them all the accounts, but say, listen, you're going to first establish these accounts. These will report in how many days would you say? And I would say average. I'm not holding you to it.
Yeah, no problem. Average what they're looking at from the time that they've made the purchase and they've made the payment, then you're looking about 30 to 45 days from the time that they've made the payment for it to report, where you're
Mhm.
actually where the vendor's gone and submitted that batch to the business credit bureaus and the business credit bureaus reflects that account.
Perfect. Perfect. And I think one of the things that you guys do a tremendous job on is being able to strengthen all three credit bureaus. Am I right? I mean, you don't just want to have, like people that are considering our program are saying, well, yeah, I'm going through a Dun and Bradstreet program, but Dun and Bradstreet is just strengthening Dun and Bradstreet. So, but what's wrong? What's
Yes,
going to happen with Equifax and Experience? So, what's the deal with that, right? You can't just get to 20 trade lines all Dun and Bradstreet and your Equifax and Experience just like nothing. So
exactly. And with Experian becoming a lot bigger player out there. Years ago, Dun and Bradstreet was like the main player, and other ones vendors viewed them but didn't hold as much importance. Now Experian is pulled a lot higher in the ranks. I mean, there's even Credit Safe out there. There's other ones out there too that also become bigger players in there. Dun and Bradstreet, like you said, will strengthen that. We're going to try to give them an overall picture to build their credit profile strong overall. Some clients will choose, hey, this account, hey, should we do another account? What accounts should I all do? And that's where it's really awesome because when we go through steps 3 through 7 with them, we've already established and been talking with them about steps 1 and 2. We've gone through that. We know their business, we know where they're at, we know what their goals are. Now we can do specialize with them in steps 3 through 7 and say, okay, from this, this, and this you've told us, here's going to be what I think you would like best in these steps. And we just, all get excited to see their success.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now, with the business credit, with clients coming on board, and this goes out for the partners. For those of you that weren't here, maybe about 9 days ago when we started talking a little bit about advising, selling the advising. I do a really good job at it. Not boasting here or anything like that, but I do a really good job at explaining to clients that these are the experts, right? Basically the way I see my advising team is they're handing you over, you're standing in front of a bank or maybe a field with a map, and it has an X on it, and it says, here's the shovel, here's the map, let's dig together, and let me show you the $100,000 that's been dug for the last 30 years. So when it comes down to selling the program, I think one of the biggest emphasis that our partners and you guys should really put out there is you have a fully dedicated team, I mean, fully staffed, dedicated to the success of your clients. And when you're handing over your client and putting them through the system, and when we're making that first connection, making the first impression, we're always going to go for their best interests. We always want to make sure that we're stepping with the right foot first, and really keeping that client engaged so that they are moving through the process fairly quickly. They're not missing a step, and a lot of times people will come to us, hey, listen, I've been following you guys for about a year. I've been following you guys for 3 months, and I try to do this, and I've gotten what I've gotten, and I just need to take it to the next level. And I think that by you explaining to your client, listen, I have a fully equipped team of experts that know how to help you build business credit, from business name to setting up your entity to getting your Dun and Bradstreet number for free, to all these small little things that mean so much in this whole journey called building business credit. So please rely on your team of advisors because they've been fully trained over and over again, and they have their meetings, and they're always evolving into new things, always vetting out new banks, finding out new accounts, how these banks, they figure out how these banks guidelines work, and then they're placing this information into our portal so that now that your client has full access to these lenders. But it takes a live person, a live professional person like our advising team to be able to help them and hold their hand through this process. It's a really good feeling, to be able to have that type of support, especially from a partner's side. Um, so Jen, anything as far as Dun and Bradstreet? From time to time we get to hear people say, well, listen, I'm doing Dun and Bradstreet, and I'm gonna be able to build some vendor accounts with that program. Dun and Bradstreet is a credit reporting agency, right?
Yes. And
And
Dun& Bradstreet is great. I'll let you go for a
yeah,
second
yeah,
there.
sorry. And so a lot of times people will get, all wrapped up into Dun and Bradstreet. Yeah, they can offer, and I'm putting this out there because we're seeing this come about. Dun and Bradstreet is dropping a lot of money into marketing. Dun and Bradstreet is dropping a lot of, approach, and they have a sales team that says you need to build your business credit through Dun and Bradstreet, and oh, you have one account that's not reporting fairly and correctly. So we're seeing that they're trying to hook people into that program. So yeah, Jen, what are your thoughts on that?
Dun& Bradstreet is a great company. They are pretty aggressive in their sales tactics. So I've sat on, over the years, I've sat on many calls where Dun& Bradstreet will try to persuade someone to buy their business credit builder program. What you were saying even earlier is still true. What happens is they'll try to do that, but it's only going to build Dun& Bradstreet, right? It's going to build up their Dun& Bradstreet report. And also, too, it's not going to show the credibility portion of it. And it's also not always going to show to them that they can add, they'll tell them they can add vendors. And hey, you can add all these vendors that you have, but it doesn't always go into detail when they're talking with their salesperson at Dun& Bradstreet that there's a whole list of ones they can't add. So clients will get really excited and be like, okay, I have strategic network solutions. I want you to add this to Dun& Bradstreet. I've paid you now about $1,500 is a normal fee they'll pay Dun& Bradstreet for that program, even higher, and that price will continue to change. And I paid you that. And now remember, this is just for credit monitoring. That's really all they get is a credit monitoring report for that high of a price. You can get credit monitoring for Experian and Dun& Bradstreet for only $24 a month. So anyways, to go back to that, and then they'll be like, well, hey, Dun& Bradstreet didn't list strategic. They say they already report, but they don't report to Dun& Bradstreet. No, they don't. And that's where the catch comes into it. They can add accounts, but it's usually going to, if there's a whole list of ones they can't. So it's going to be more of a unique type of account that they can add. And if they start to argue it back with Dun& Bradstreet, Dun& Bradstreet can just choose to wipe out their report. That doesn't happen very often. That's more in a situation if there's a late or there's other items on there that they'll go back and forth with them. So Dun& Bradstreet is great company. I'm not saying that negative by any means. They're an awesome entity, a business credit bureau to deal with. But when it comes into their business credit membership that they try to sell on that, it doesn't pan out the way clients would hope it to pan out because really it's just a credit monitoring service that they can add only certain accounts to. They can get the same, almost the same type of report by just looking at the I update, which we have a link for that in step 2. Wouldn't show their credit score, but there's no price for that.
Exactly. Exactly. So we bring this up because we want to provide this information as more and more of our partners are starting to do small joint venture live events, either for credit repair or for tax services, and they also want to offer our program. You will get asked from time to time from a client that says, "Listen, I was contacted by Dun& Bradstreet, and they say they have a business credit building program like yours, but yeah, it's $1,500." So we want to be clear. This is strictly off of vendor counts and it's a major credit reporting agency that will strengthen their vendor account and they're Dun& Bradstreet report, but there's still 2 more remaining credit reporting agencies. There's Equifax, there's Experian, and they need to be able to go through the process and build all of them equivalently to be able to obtain what they need ultimately at the end of the program. And as we're coming here to a tail end of our weekly training, Jen, anything that you'd like to shed some light on? Anything that you're kind of facing and you want to reach out here to our partners and just express, or anything that you'd like to finalize with?
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate that the advisor team is always here to help. We want to make it as easy as possible for clients, at the point when they're applying for the accounts and then they're waiting for those accounts to report. That can sometimes feel a little bit long, but at that point too, we are still always here to help answer questions, even if they just feel like, hey, I've made the purchase now. You just don't have to pay that bill till 30 days later, and then it takes that 30 and 45 days after that to report. That's not a problem because we can still guide them on, okay, once these report, let's review these next ones and you can be ready to go. So we just really encourage them always to give us a call. Don't want them to be discouraged if they feel it takes time to build credit. They're very excited about building it, and we share that excitement with them. We want to help them that strong foundation and then help them to see the success. And just
Awesome.
thank you all
Awesome.
for the privilege of helping your clients.
Yes, indeed, indeed. Well, Jan, it was a honor having you here this week. I know you're super busy, but you always make time not only for our partners, for the sales team, for our finance team, and just a wealth of knowledge here. And I'm so excited that you were here this week here with us and that you spent some time to just kind of shed some light on some of the things here, some of the questions that we get asked often. That as an account manager here, I don't have those questions or those answers. So I greatly appreciate the opportunity you hanging here with us, and look forward to maybe sometime in the future doing this here with you again.
Sounds great. Thank you for the privilege
Thanks.
of joining in.
Thank you. Thanks. Again, thank you so much, guys, for spending some time here with us this week. Until next week, again, Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll be bringing out some really cool, neat stuff here happening next week. We got an event that we're going out this week, and we're just going to gather a lot of information to share here with you next week. So thanks again. Spend some time here with us, and look forward to next week. Thanks again. Take care.